Good evening, everybody. It's me, Messy Jessie, on the Thin Line crew, and I am here with my lovely co-host, Colleen.
Hey,
Hey.
Colleen.
Here we are on a dark and stormy, well, kind of going through. We're not sure what it's doing, but we definitely could use the rain and not the thunder, lightning. Too many
Yeah,
fires going on.
definitely.
So, yeah. Um, but we are here talking about kind of a serious topic. And Colleen, you're going to talk about PTSD and being in an abusive situation.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of let you take over and explain a lot of things of what your signs were or whatever you want to talk about. I think it's good and important information. So,
It's really rough to I'm a fixer. So I'm always trying to fix people and fix relationships and fix this and fix that. And so now I know it's called codependency. I've gone through a lot of counseling. So tell you where I am now. Like I understand that part of me now and understand how not to do that ever again. But I
yeah.
didn't understand it when I was in the middle of it. And I'm talking about my marriage with my ex-husband, and what happened. It was a living nightmare. And there were signs, but I chose to ignore them. And it's funny because we're going to release a podcast in a while from somebody that we just interviewed, and she said the exact same things that I said to my therapist. I thought I could love him enough. I
Yeah.
thought I, and you can't.
Yeah.
So when I met my ex-husband, he had only been back from Iraq a couple of years, and um, now I honestly cannot remember how many times he deployed over there. He was in the army, and he was he did many, many years in the army. He did uh what was I gonna say? He did well, he wasn't all in Iraq, so he was in Germany and he did a lot of different, different stuff. He was an
Mhm.
army mechanic, and then he worked in like a transport division. So um there were signs when we started dating. I saw things. I saw the short fuse, like unbelievably short fuse. um I saw the bursts of anger, and I saw a lot of drinking, but he kept promising that he would taper that off, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay." And I drink. It's not like I'm a prude. I drink, right? But
Mhm.
I don't drink like that. I'm a
Yeah.
social drinker. Sometimes I drink too much if we have a big party or something, but I don't drink every day. And I have friends that do, and I'm as long as there's not a big personality change with it, I'm like, I don't care. It's your life. You do what you want. But I should have seen that and stopped everything right then and there, especially when um, there were statements made. So I have a farm. I didn't have a farm then. I had my animals, I had my horses at a boarding facility because I was renting a house in the mountains, and I had just my dogs and my cats. And he would get incredibly frustrated with the fact that I had I had those responsibilities with my animals, and I went out to the barn, the boarding facility almost every single day after work to ride my horse, to take care of my horse. It was just my one horse at the time. It was just Zephyr, and I said, "Well, I had him like 12 years before I even knew
Yeah.
you."
Before you.
So
Yeah.
I this is what I do. I ride, I train, and I compete with my horses. This is before I got injured. So it was like this is what I do. This is who I am. Work is what I do to make sure that I can provide for who I am, which is I
Yeah.
ride, I train, and I show horses. So there was a lot of there was times where he's like, "You need to get rid of him. You need to sell him." I'm like, "Get rid of him? Why?" Then I lose this big chunk of who I am. Why would I get rid of him? So there was made statements made like that, and I put my foot down on that pretty clearly, and he backed off of that for a while. And then we got married, which was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, was get married to somebody who I knew was in severely broken. But I thought I could help fix him. I thought he just needed something stable in his life. I
Yeah.
thought that it's so hard to describe. I thought that if he just had something that he could hold on to, everything for him would work out better. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And I think I could kind of get what you're saying. Like, if you loved him enough, then that would change him.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
trust me, if there's anybody having doubts about red flags, I mean red flags that you're seeing before you get married, don't get married because they get worse, not better.
Yeah.
I really thought, okay, well, me providing a stable house, he couldn't hold a job when he came back from Iraq, and I thought maybe this is not the greatest area to live in and try to find work. This is a really economically depressed area that we live in. So I thought, okay, well, I understand that. I have a good job. So I'm the primary breadwinner. If he can do whatever he can do to help, that's great. You know, he had a VA disability coming in. So he had an income coming in. It's not like I'm supporting him entirely, but I did see a lot of like, um, I paid 99% of the bills,
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of stuff, you know? And then if we went to the grocery store and I asked him to, can you go get the groceries this time? Well, then we can't get any meat. I mean, it was like, it's okay if we spend your money, but we're not spending mine. And
Yeah.
then there was a lot of that going on. And I'm still like, okay, well, I'm making this pretty good salary. So whatever, I just try to let it roll, let it roll. I always, all the way through this relationship, I hear my dad all the time because he was so easygoing. I am very much my mom. She was not. She was a Leo, tiger, or lion. Like
She was
she
the
was
fighter.
also she was not as aggressive as I am now. Like now I am pretty aggressive. And I think a lot of that stems from what happened.
Yeah.
I've always been type A. I've always been there. But now I'm like, "Grr," and it's hard for me to back that off because I
Yeah.
go quickly there and I shouldn't. And I always try to work on it, but sometimes it just gets the best of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And
So
I
most of
think
the time,
that's your defense mechanism now.
I think
Like,
so.
because nobody was listening to you before, even
Yeah.
like when you talk about stuff from that happened when you guys first started dating, with him taking over, or say, you're not spending enough time with me, basically.
Right.
You're taking too much time to be yourself and be who you are. I want to take that away. It's
Well,
narcissistic
and I've never
behavior.
been married,
Yeah.
right? So I'm like, I have lived most of my adult life all by myself. Well, all of my adult life, really, all by myself. I've had a couple of boyfriends, but nothing serious. I was busy training horses, moving from state to state. I was in the military. I was doing my own thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm supposed to change my life to all of a sudden be a couple. I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. I was trying
But
to figure it out.
let me ask you this really fast. Now that you look back, what was it with him? Because what was it with him that you seen before all this? Like, what attracted you to him? Like, was there like Prince Charming, and then all of a sudden he turned
He
into?
was very, very, yes. So I will explain some of the diagnosis that came out of the final event.
Okay.
But yes, one of his traits, and now I know is a diagnosis, is this extreme narcissistic personality. So he was very, very good at telling you what you wanted to hear and being who you wanted him to be in the moment, but he couldn't hold it together very long.
Mm.
And Actually, the amount of unbelievable abuse started our wedding night.
Wow.
He held it together through, like, 18 months of dating, and he held it together pretty good. I saw glimpses. I did see the glimpses, and then we got married, and it was that day, that
It
night,
was it was just
that the
like, you belong to me.
exactly, and he told me that night or a few nights after, he called me the C word, and he said, "You're that, and you're like every other woman I've ever met." I was just sitting
Yeah.
there having a beer on the back deck going, "Where'd that come from?" And he said that his mother was too, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, his mom is seriously one of the nicest women I've ever met. We're still friends, his mother and I.
Yes.
So,
I mean,
you know, anyway, the amount of abuse escalated. So it started off with him, just he drank a lot of beer,
mm,
and I kept doing what I needed to do. I thought, okay, we ended up buying a house, and that probably didn't help the stress on him, although I made the payments.
you're
I'm
like, I'm the one that's
it's like I
responsible.
bought the house, I made the payments, I did
Yeah.
this, I did that. I'm like, me, me, me. I think his only bill he had to pay was the electric bill, and then he would literally take the breaker out of the breaker box for the AC in the summer, so I couldn't run it. That's how bad it was. It's so bad. It's so here's what's crazy. Everybody's like, why didn't he leave? Okay. So we bought this place and we had like 3 acres, and I brought my horse home, and I had my donkey. I had my dogs, my cats. I had my animals. But
Yeah.
finally was able to get my critters home and in one place. And so I'm working constantly at work. I'm coming home, I'm refencing, I'm landscaping, I'm doing all the stuff that I've done here on this farm, right? I'm just constantly upgrading. I painted the exterior of the house. I spruced it all up, painted the inside. I'm like, work, 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 work. We never went anywhere because I got to the point real quick, like within 2 weeks of being married to this guy. I never wanted to go anywhere with him because it turned into a fight.
Yeah.
Like the night before we were supposed to go anywhere, the yelling would start, the screaming, the yelling, the throwing stuff through the rooms. And I'm like, what is going on? I never could figure out what would trigger him. It was this just demon. So we had a family room downstairs. It was like a tri-level, split-level house, and we ended up making that his music room because he was a musician,
Mm.
and bought him Zildjian cymbals and all this nice drums, and he had bought him like an electric guitar and a bass guitar and all this stuff. Like I've just kept buying him stuff, and I remember our guest talking about how one of her friends said, "Make sure there's enough money to spoil," and will tell me. I'll tell you what, right now, spoiling doesn't make any difference to
No.
somebody who's manic.
No.
It it does not. Okay, so he told me right after we got married that he was bipolar, but he was on medication for it. Okay. I didn't quite understand what that meant. I didn't understand. I had to start researching it because I didn't know what that meant. And I understand he told me what medication he was on, and I didn't ever ask about. He would go to the VA all the time. I never asked about what he was going there for or what medications he was on because he's an adult. Maybe I
Right.
should have. But I was an older adult getting married to an older adult, so I thought, "Okay, he had his life before me.
Yeah.
I've had my life before him."
You might have his shit
Anyway,
together, maybe.
I thought, but looking back, so many problems. But I'm a very social person. I mean, I'm reclusive on my property, and I've always been that way. I hole up here and I don't leave it. But I also like to have barbecues and dinner parties all the time, and I like people to come over, and I got a hot tub put in down there at the house, and so we had friends over, and um, the paranormal group was coming over, just stuff all the time. But I always knew that after an event, and this turned into a nightly thing, but particularly after anybody came over to the house, as soon as I'd go to bed, I go to bed, and I always have fairly early because I'm an early riser. Maybe it's just because have animals, they're
Yeah.
hungry. I'm always like, I got to get up and take care of them before I do anything.
Yeah.
So I go to bed early, and then he would be down farting around like in his drum room or doing whatever he did. And by the time he'd take a shower, I'm basically going to sleep. I am not starting to nod off. So by the time he'd come up, he would spend then. This is hard for me. It's hard for me to believe that this happened. So I can understand if our viewers don't believe that this happened.
Hmm.
Because it started to be after people would go home, and then it turned into a nightly ordeal where he'd spend anywhere from 20 minutes to 4 hours at the foot of my bed screaming obscenities at me, calling me every name in the book, telling me how horrible and awful I am. Everything that ever goes wrong is all my fault. It was just this constant barrage of like screaming at me at the top of his lungs. And I know like my cat would be under the bed, just like what?
Yeah.
And I never knew what was going to trigger it. So I started realizing that it was when people had come over to the house because he had to hold himself together in front of
Hmm.
them because he did have a job for a while here. And oh, they loved him. Oh, he's the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody loved him at work.
It's
They couldn't get enough of him. He was amazing. I'd hear all of this stuff from these women that he worked with, and I'm like, you do not know the demon I am married to.
yeah.
But and then later on, after the big event that I will go into, when I talked about this to my counselor later, I said, it's like he devolved every day
Yeah.
from holding it together, Mr. Wonderful. He'd drive in at 5 o'clock. He'd pop his first beer, and by 5:30, he was mean. And
Wow.
by 11 o'clock at night, he was enraged.
So
Okay.
did he see any kind of like, so I have two questions. So
Yeah.
one, did his mom ever say that he had this behavior before he went into the service? And then did he see any kind of wartime battle to
He did see some action. I didn't know that he was necessarily the one in the fight, but because he was
Mhm.
in a transport, there was a lot of stuff that he saw
Okay.
and a lot of things that happened to the company. So I don't know. He went into the military, I think he was like 18.
Yeah.
So, he actually played in a band before the military, and he traveled all over. It was Northern California with this band they played in, even though he was underage, they'd go into bars and play, and they never questioned him because he was in the band. Like, how old is
Right.
this guy? He's a drummer, you know what I mean? It was weird.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's when he started drinking, but there was some family issues, but not enough for me to blame this on that. I think a lot of this originally started from being bipolar and probably not being treated
Correctly.
for it for a very long time because I don't know when he started getting treatment for it.
Hmm.
I don't know if the service allows you to go in with that diagnosis now. I
Did
don't
they even
know.
really check for it? Like, I think they just checked for your
Well,
if you were committed at the time.
I don't know. I don't know. So I remember going through MEPS, which is the military enlistment MEPS, in military enlistment placement service, I think it's called.
Yeah, I think so.
There's Yeah, there's MEPS all over the country, right? And when you're going to enlist for all branches, you go to MEPS, and that's where you get your physical, your psychiatric evaluation, all this stuff, raise your hand, and you're in, right? So I just remember the stupid psychological questions they asked me, and I'm like, really? I mean, it seems so stupid to me. I don't
Yeah.
think that when I went in, they certainly didn't look for anything. They did ask for my medical records, but if you don't give them to them, how are they going to know?
Yeah. 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 But I think they're a little bit more careful anymore now.
I hope so.
But yeah, I don't know though. I guess that's a
And I'm not
question.
saying that in this marriage I'm the most perfect person out there, but
Oh
I don't
no.
fight back. I I am a type A, but I am non-confrontational. I'm type A when it comes to, "Let's get this podcast going, Jess." I'm type A when it's like, "Let's just go have a barbecue." I am that type A. I will
Yeah.
not have a confrontation with somebody, I walk away. I get super quiet, that's my dad. Super quiet, walk away, calm down. I
Hmm.
cannot fight. It
Yeah.
I can't do it, it makes me actually sick. So, um, and I had to be confrontational in my job after the service.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I was in enforcement, inspection and enforcement, and so I had a lot of nasty things happen in that job, and I in my private life, 0 comfort, I don't like it. I
Yeah.
lose sleep over things that happened 10 years ago, over words that were said. I'm just not that person, I can't do it. So, these rages were coming more and more often every night. He would go out and threaten to shoot the livestock. He would go out and threaten to shoot the dogs. He'd threaten to kill the cats. It was just this constant, I'm like, "What is wrong with you? Like, stop it." You know? And then the next day he's sitting there cuddling with the cat on the couch. It's like, what? I couldn't
It's
I
almost like
couldn't
a
figure it.
sick game he was playing.
Uh-huh.
Like,
The other the other thing that I have to say that goes into the paranormal realm, right?
hmm,
That this is what I do. He was probably one of the most gifted mediums I've ever known.
that's crazy.
So things were going on in our house. We have a lot of activity in that house. And I won't really get into that because that's not this podcast, but I can tell you that this is how strong a medium he was or is. I think he's still alive. I don't know. Um, He was talking with a friend of his in Denver one evening who owned I wanna say like a music store. He owned a chain of them, and they had been buddies back in the day of, like, high school days and playing music together, and he knew this guy really, really well, and they were very good friends, and they talked every once in a while, and he came upstairs, and he was in a really good mood. Whenever he talked to his friends and his family, he'd be in a really good mood, so I was, like, praying they'd call all the time, or I'd be like, "Hey, why don't you call so and so?" Just to, like, Um, that's why I was outside all the time. I didn't wanna be in that house with him. So, um, so I'm thinking, "Great. Whew, good night. This is gonna be a good night." He just talked to his buddy. He's in a really good mood. He's gonna go down there and play some music. I can go to bed and not have a screaming match tonight. He won't be yelling at me, right? And then he comes upstairs with this really puzzled look on his face, like, 20 minutes later, and I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "I don't understand. I just talked to my buddy on the phone, but he's down in my drum room right now." I said, What do you mean?" Because I knew instantly that meant he's dead.
Oh,
And he goes, "I don't understand what's happening." And I'm thinking, what's going on with him, with my ex, when the phone rang and it was his buddy's son who told him he just found him passed.
my God.
Oh God. So that was bad. I mean, he was a very gifted medium with that.
Yeah.
It was so sometimes when things were going on in the house, he was able to clarify what was happening. Other times it would spin him into these weird rage episodes. And I never could figure out with him what was going on. He did talk about the military every so often. I did see his DD-214. That's the paperwork that you get out from the military when you leave the military or every time you have orders cut. It lists all your awards and where you were stationed and everything about you, right? And
Yeah.
he had a shadow box made of all of his awards, and he was pretty decorated. He kept it together really, really, really well during the military, really well for who he became when he came home. Can I attribute all of this to PTSD? No, because we found out later after everything happened that there was other diagnoses I didn't know about that he
Oh,
hid
that's
from me.
crazy.
Um, like I said, I didn't ask. I was just busy doing my thing. We just basically cohabitated in the same household, and I put up with verbal abuse like you wouldn't believe on a daily basis. It was really bad. My boss noticed it. So of course now I have PTSD from it. My boss
Yeah.
was noticing my inability to focus really, really well. And he asked me what was going on. And I told him, and he's like, you got to get out of this house. Like, where am I going to go? That was my thing. Where am I going to go with
Where am I gonna take
livestock?
my animals and stuff? Yeah.
Right. I mean, so I was looking actively. It took me 5 years to find it, but I only found everything after. So, so with his PTSD episodes, he would go into these manic, and I guess this was more the bipolar, the manic episodes where he'd be either really, really happy for some time and
Mhm.
or really, really angry and down. And I never knew like every day who he was going to be. Like, I'd get up really early, get dressed, leave the house, get the heck out of there, and go to work.
Right.
I
Right.
never knew who I was coming home to, and I started throwing up at work. Mm, yeah, I ended up getting diagnosed. I started having these really bad pains right here, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It was really intense pain, and then it got to stomach pain where my stomach hurt so bad that a friend of mine, he would not. There was one night where my stomach hurt so bad, I really thought that maybe something had burst. Maybe it's my appendix, I'm feeling it
Right.
where my
Something
stomach
is going
is.
on.
Something is wrong. It was so bad I was doubled over on the floor, and I couldn't barely catch my breath, and I asked him to take me to the ER, and he told me, "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm faking it. Get the hell up." Okay. So I ended up calling my friend, and she came over and took me to the ER, and they did a bunch of scans and said that I had gastroparesis.
Oh yeah.
And the pain, so what that means is that it's called idiopathic gastroparesis, which means there's no reason for it. Your stomach stopped working. You can no longer eat food. So I had from that day for a year, a solid year, I was on a liquid diet only because it could not process food. It didn't have that
It couldn't contract.
yes, it
Hmm.
couldn't. If you put food in there, it basically rotted. And that was the pain I started experiencing because the food was rotting because the stomach couldn't do, what do they call that? Peristalsis or something
Yeah,
like that,
something
where
like
it's
that. Hmm.
pushing it into your abdomen, your intestinal tract, right? It could no
Yeah.
longer do that. So the food is rotting and just leaking into my intestinal tract.
Yeah.
And so it started to back up because I'm still eating, but I couldn't figure out the pain. So now I'm like eating only scrambled eggs, or I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And it got worse and worse and worse till that night was like the breaking point. And went, oh. And so I
Yeah.
was on all this medication, which is terrible side effects, and I went on a basically liquid diet, and it was smoothies only. That's all I could do. And so that went on for about a year. And I said, well, why? What? How did this happen? How come? And they said, we don't know. Well, it stopped when I got divorced. I
It's because
mean,
your body was in that fight or
yeah,
flight mode all the
the
time.
amount of stress that you're under,
Hmm.
the stress does really terrible things to your body. I did end up with kind of a permanent issue with my throat from all of that that I worked through. It's not as bad as it was. I can live with it now. I have bouts of it where it flares up. I have problems. But I now know that you cannot fix these kinds of issues. And the PTSD and the flares, and then the psychological issues that were with it that I didn't know about. You can't love somebody out of that. You
Mm-mm.
can't fix it, and it will only increase. I ca I try to work, and it's like I see some of these couples, and I know some of these couples, and I'm like, "Honey, you can't fix this." Male or female.
Yeah.
Uh, a friend of mine who a male, his wife was very much, uh the psychological stuff going
Yeah.
on she was doing to him, and I'm like, you got to get away from this because he was falling apart. He did, and he found someone else. He got remarried, and I've never seen somebody so happy in my life. I mean, it's once you go through that and then you find someone who's not doing that, you keep waiting for that other shoe to drop, and then
Yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't drop, and they're just a regular person. They're not
Yeah.
out to harm you.
Yeah.
So along with all of the screaming fits and everything else were the threats of ending his life, that he was going to end his life. And it was by every means possible. It was anytime he got mad at me, well, I'm just going to do this. And I'm like, well, at first you plead. At first you say, what are you talking about? Don't say stuff like that. That's horrible. Don't say that. And then after a while, you go, okay, I, I don't know what to say. You can't,
Yeah.
you know, the first few times he said something like that early in our marriage, I called the Veterans Crisis Line, and I talked to them and said, "He's saying this." And they said, "Well, he needs to call and talk to us." I'm like, "Well, he's not going to." Well, I realized after counseling that that's another control and manipulation tactic. He didn't have any he wasn't really gonna do it, because most people who actually do something like that don't threaten it like he did. It was part of the conversation. Well,
Yeah.
if you're mad at me, I'm just going to go out and do this. Well, okay. I don't know what to say. It sounds really callous, but when you listen to it and you hear it almost on a weekly basis, you get to the point you're like, I can't stop you.
Yeah.
What do you want me to say? I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it's more of the
Oh,
control, and it's more of like, I want you to feel bad for me, and please don't take that wrong. Anybody, it's in that relationship that you had, it was like, you go to work, you're not sure if you're going to come home and find him gone, or, it's like you didn't know who to believe or what to believe.
I didn't know. It's different than like you and I having a personal conversation and I say, God, sometimes I think about this. And you're like, that's different than a threat.
Hmm.
When you call somebody up and say, just talk me down off this ledge right now, I'm feeling really unstable, can you please talk to me? That's way different than I'm mad at you, I'm going to do this. Really? Like, so he would call me at work and do stuff like this. I'd be in a meeting and they'd call me out and say, you got an emergency call, go take the call, and he's threatening. And I'm like, okay. Well, the first few times I talk, it's like, what do I do? Call the police and have them go do a welfare check? Now I can't focus at work. I'm all spun up. It's like this was affecting my job. And thank God I had the boss that I had, who was
Hmm.
unbelievably understanding and kept telling me, you have to get out of this situation. And I knew
Yeah.
it, but I didn't know what to do. I was trying, but nothing was opening up for me to make that move yet. So there was several surgeries that he had to go through. I think he did paratrooper for a while as well in the military, so he was a really tall guy, and his body was beat to hell from it. You can't land that many times and not have spinal issues and knee issues and everything that comes with it. Even though you're doing a soft landing as much as you can, that takes a toll on your body. So
Yeah.
he was being treated for, he got knee replacements, and then he had uh, the big surgery was metal rods put in his spine, on his spine, to align it to get everything
Oh, geez.
stabilized. Because he
Yeah.
was in a lot of pain. I'll give him that. He was in a lot of pain. The military has a way of grinding you up and spitting you out. And
Yeah.
even with me, and I didn't have any of those kind of physical jobs. They did it with me, and I wasn't in, but a quarter of the time he was in. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can see that. So anyway, so it all led up to the back surgery. So he had his back surgery, and I did not know at this point all the medications that he was taking from the VA, because I never asked. I knew he was on the one for the bipolar, and I knew he took some pain pills once in a while, because I'd gone to the back surgeon with him through these appointments to figure out, what he was going to have done. There's medications that, if you're on certain medications, pain pills react to those really negatively,
Yeah.
particularly if they are antipsychotic medications. I didn't know this because I didn't know he was on them. So he ended up having this back surgery, and I had my friend over at the house for a couple of nights when we came home, um, just to kind of help me in case he fell or something, just so I could get. He was a tall guy. He was a big guy,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh God, what am I? So she was there, and then he was kind of walking around the house. He was pretty steady, but I could see his eyes, his pupils would pinpoint when an episode, these manic episodes came on where the anger was going to flare. He'd get almost a pinpoint pupil. They were scary. His eyes turned really scary.
Wow.
It was, yeah. And I kept watching his eyes and watching his posture and his mannerism. And I told my friend, I said, you need to go home. She goes, why? I said, you need to go home. Things are going to be very bad tonight. You need to leave. She goes, I'm not leaving you with him. I said, you need to get out of here. If he's going to hurt someone, I don't want him hurting you. I couldn't leave him alone at that point because he was really unstable. I was sleeping. So I went to the guest room that night because, first off, he just had this major back surgery.
Yeah.
And I didn't, my friend had been in the guest room. Then I went to the guest room. And I had been on the couch while she was there just because I didn't want, what if I accidentally kicked him in the back with my knee or in bed, right? So I was trying to give
Right.
him the whole bed because he just had this major spinal surgery. Like his incision was probably 13 inches long, if not
Yeah.
longer. It was
Well, and any
big.
movement, would be painful,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So, and I have a list on the counter, and I was making sure because I did not know he was on all this other stuff in the VA. So he had his pain medicines there, he had all his meds, and I had a list of what time he took everything, right? So that we'd make sure that he was staying on top of the pain medicine because I know what that's like after a big back surgery. Stay on top of the pain, get on
Mhm.
top of it. But I didn't know have all the pieces of information. So I go to the guest room that night, and whenever I had gone to the guest room before, like when he'd have these really horrible episodes and I would leave and go just across the hall to the guest room, I was not allowed to shut the door. Never allowed to shut the door. Well, so I had the door open and I'm in the guest room and I'm just watching a movie and kind of letting him do his thing, but you could feel it coming. I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be a bad one. This is probably gonna be the worst one he's ever had." Like, and I'm just laying there trying to be as quiet as possible, got a movie on really low, and I heard him scream from the living room. I heard him scream, and I don't know if he said my name at that point, but I heard him scream. So I popped out of bed because I didn't know if he fell,
Mhm.
and I looked at him, and he had his handgun, one of the guns in his hand, and he was coming for me.
What?
He came
Oh
barreling
God.
up those stairs with the gun, and I slammed the door, locked it, and I'm trying to put furniture in front of it, and thank God I had my cell phone, and I'm on the phone to 911, and I'm like, and they've been to our house several times because of his behavior, because
Mhm.
he'd been so out of control that they'd come, I'd call them, they'd come, they'd talk him down. Sometimes he wouldn't come out. And I'm like, aren't you going to do something? They said, no, we can't force him to come out. I said, he's waving a weapon around. They wouldn't come out. They wouldn't do anything about it. They just said, why don't you leave for the night? That
What?
kind of crap. Okay. So this time I called him and I said, and they could hear him. And he's splitting the door with his weight, splitting the bedroom door. And I'm trying to I have a huge dresser that's just so heavy. It takes like 4 people to lift it. I'm trying to shove that thing in front of the door, and I can't lift it's so heavy. So then I hear him, and I'm on the phone to 911 saying he's got a gun, he's threatening to shoot me, and he said and I said they could hear him splitting the door, they could hear him going crazy. And then he went downstairs. Well, his dorm room was right underneath the guest room. And I told the dispatcher, I said, I think he's going to start shooting up.
Oh shit.
It was only one more, and when we looked at the door after this, it would have taken one more blow, and he would have been in the door, but he stopped. And, then he's screaming, doesn't have to be like this or something to that effect, I can't remember, but anyway, the sheriff's like, we're on our way, we're on our way. Just try to can you get out of the house? And I'm like, I don't know where he's at, but there was multiple exits in that house. It was
Mhm.
so I'm like, okay, um, he's down there, he's screaming and yelling, and I don't know at that point if he fired. I don't think so. I just remember being like, holy crap, I don't have my weapon. If I would have
Mhm.
had my weapon and he would have fired on me or came in and drawn on me, I'm going to defend myself at that point. I didn't have my weapon. So, the sheriff department says, "We've got an officer outside on the back of the house. Can you make it outside?" So, I told him, I said, "Yeah, I can go through our sliding glass bedroom." We had a sliding glass door in our bedroom. I said, "I can make it out that door and out the back of the deck." I said, "But I think he's in the room right under this on this side. I think he's still down there." I went flying out of that house, and the deputy grabbed me, and we went down to the barn. And he's like, "Where is he?" And I told him where he was physically in the house, and they brought the Bearcat up,
Oh,
and
wow.
they had officers everywhere at this point. And the officer put me in one of a vehicle, and we went up and turned around where we could see the house up off the side of the mountain where we could see our house. And they had officers literally everywhere. On the roof, they had officers everywhere. And then we hear 2 gunshots. And I'm thinking, "Hmm, they took him out." I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Though he shot himself twice, but didn't do any damage. It was a through and through. He knew how to do that. And they said, "Do you wanna go to the hospital with him?" I'm like, "No, you do not. I'm done." That was it. Like, I should have been done a long time ago. I was
Yeah.
physically and emotionally, it was severed right then and there when he tried to come through the door and he put a weapon. That's not the first time he drew a weapon on me. Um, there were other incidents that were terrifying, but for whatever reason, I'm like, "Okay, I've got it. Okay, this is it." And so they took him to the ER. The ER doc said, "We need to know what medications he's on." And I told my friend, she came over, and, I said, "Well, I don't know, but I'll go downstairs. I think they're all in his dresser. I don't know. I don't go through his stuff." And, he said, "You need to bring all of the medication to the ER." I said, "Okay." So my friend and I went down to his music room, and we start going through all his stuff. We filled up a 13-gallon, like, regular household trash bag full of pills. The whole white trash bag with the drawstring was full of medication from the VA. So, like, I can't even describe to you how many pills were in that. So, she takes me up there. I'm in no position to drive at this point. I'm, just frantic. She takes me up to the ER room, and at the hospital, and the doc meets us, and they take you to all of these, like, interior rooms when something like this happens. They don't want you sitting out there.
Right.
And so he goes, "Well, what's all this?" I said, "Well, these are his meds." And he goes, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "What's in there?" I said, "I don't know. I just cleaned out his dresser. Okay.
Mhm.
You wanted meds? I brought all of his meds." So he dumps
Here
it
they are.
out on like this gurney, and they start separating them by type and class. And is he on all of this stuff right now, like at the same time? And I said, I don't know. I only know this. This is one thing he takes for bipolar. I go, "That's the only thing I know he takes. I don't know any of this other stuff. I never go to the VA with him. I don't quiz him when he comes back from these appointments. He's seeing a VA psychiatrist." So, he goes, "Well, within all of these meds here, there's like 5 to 7 contraindications. They can't be taken together. They're all antipsychotic. If he's taking them all and he's on this pain medication for this back surgery he just had," because he asked me, he goes, "What happened to his back?" I said, "He had surgery like 4 days ago, 5 days ago." They're like, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No." I said, "Here's this pain medication." He goes, "You can't take that with these." I mean, it was like the guy was losing his mind. I'm like, "I don't know anything. I don't know. I'm just telling you." And he
Yeah.
goes, "He had a psychotic break." That's what he had. He finally gone. He spent a few days in a hospital, like in just a regular room. He wasn't in ICU because, like I said, it was a through and through. patched the wound, good to go, stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
He didn't hit an organ. Then they took him up to the 5th floor to the psych unit
Right.
where he was out of it. And then they were gonna let him come home. So I get on the phone to my father and I'm telling my dad what's going on. My dad was a cop in LA County and he's like, "What? They were gonna put it down as a misdemeanor disturbing the peace." And my dad said, "You call that sheriff back and you tell him you are filing for a felony assault charge."
Yeah.
And I said, "I can do that?" He goes, "Yeah, you can do that." And this is my dad, who's an extreme pacifist. My God, he drew the Pink Panther. He's a fun guy,
Yeah.
but he was riled up. He's like, "Are you kidding me?" Because I never told my dad about any of this abuse. I was so embarrassed to be in this marriage. So I called the sheriff and I told him, I said, "Okay, I want a felony assault charge. And what do I need to do? I'm gonna charge him. Like I'm gonna, whatever that means, however that means. I don't know."
Yeah. Yeah.
So the sheriff goes, "Oh." And I said, "Yeah, he's not coming back to this house. I want him arrested for what he did. I'm done. No more of this. You guys keep just slapping his hand and thinking no big deal. This is a
Yeah.
big deal. He came very close to killing me tonight, and I'm done." So they went ahead and filed for felony assault. And only because I insisted. So how many
Yeah.
women out there don't know, or men don't know that you can do that? You can do that, honestly.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
did. So as soon as they released him from the hospital, they arrested him and took him to jail. So he never got to come home. They coordinated. So they walk out, boom, you're arrested.
Yep.
That's it. He goes to
There you
jail.
go.
So that's the jail doc. I was in contact with the jail doc, and the jail doc told me about all the medication that I had brought into the ER because they had the whole list. And the jail doc's like, "Do you understand what all this for?" And he's telling me. And then he's in contact with, I think, the VA psychiatrist at that point, trying to figure out all this medication. Like, why is he on all this stuff?
Yeah.
Um, and the jail doc said, "Yeah, this is because he's schizophrenic." "Did you know your husband's schizophrenic?" And what? I had no idea he had schizophrenia. None. I did talk to his mother about that. She goes, "Yeah, he was diagnosed right before he got out of the military or sometime in the military." First I first I kind of didn't buy that because I think that they would have put him out immediately if they thought he was schizophrenic,
Unless
if
he
they
hit
knew.
it really well,
But
like you were
yeah, that's what my
saying.
psychiatrist said, is that okay. And so there's other so and then they went through all of this counseling stuff while he was in jail, and all these psychiatrists were seeing him because he's ordering pizzas from the guards. He didn't even know where he was. Okay. So he ends up kind of coming around after a while and kind of lucid and then remembering what he did. And uh anyway, after all of this stuff, there's all these diagnoses that come out that I had no clue about. And he did an Alfred plea in, can you explain that better than I can? Do you I think
Uh,
there's enough evidence. You're
yeah,
not
and
admitting guilt, but there's evidence to show that you did it, so you'll just say,
yes,
"Yeah, I'm doing an Alfred plea."
yes,
Because
that's
he claimed that he didn't have a really good memory of that event. I think that's convenient, but okay. So he gets in veterans court because of his alcoholism. So a veterans court is a part of drug court.
mhm.
And in order to get into veterans court, you have to have a substance abuse problem. So like if I did a crime, I'm not going to get into veterans court because I'm not, unless
Right.
it claimed I was, I'm
Yeah,
not a sub, I don't, I don't have a substance abuse issue, right?
right.
Yeah, maybe chocolate. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah. I think they took into account all the medications that he was on.
well, and that he was up to almost a 36 pack a day of beer.
I can't. I'm still. I cannot.
Yeah.
The medication just blows my mind.
It, trust me, I came probably as close to getting arrested as you could, making a scene at the VA. Because we went from the ER room. I told my friend to take me over to the VA. And she did. She didn't know what I was gonna do. I called, I wanted to see that I mean, I was screaming at the top of my lungs.
Yeah.
I'm like, "I cannot believe," because based on what the ER doctor was saying, like, with all of the contraindications, they were all prescribed by the same physician.
So, and the other question I had that was in the back of my mind was like, what about the surgeon who did the back surgery? Did he not look into everything he was on?
You have to be truthful. He didn't ask for the VA records. They ask you on the form what medications you're taking. You've done that. You write it down. Well, if you
Yeah.
don't put it down, they don't know.
That's so
So
weird
he
to
didn't.
me.
I did call him a few days after this whole incident, and he goes, "I didn't know any of this."
Wow.
That was it. I mean, I'm like, "Well, I believe him because I was married to him and I didn't know it."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, he ended up going through Veterans Court, and Veterans Court is a joke, can I just say? I experienced it because at first they were making me go with him. I'm like, "Whoa, number 1, I'm the victim.
Yeah.
Number 2, I'm divorcing him. Why am I sitting here to be his support?" I'm like, "I'm the victim here. He tried to physically kill me, and I have to go." I finally told the victim's advocate at our courthouse, I said, "This is a joke, and I'm never
Yeah.
going back." I said, "This is stupid." I saw guys in there and gals who they're in for whatever they're in for, and they pee dirty. They've been using. And the
Yeah.
judge go, "Oh, now, you're not supposed to do that. So let's talk about it. Why'd you use?" Like, really? They're getting a break. They're already getting a break by being here. They're not being held to the same standards that non-veterans are being held to. They're getting a
Hmm.
break. Stop cutting these people a break and make them be accountable for what they've done. It was endless. I only saw one consequence in the time that I probably went maybe a half a dozen times, and I'm like, "This is so stupid. I can't believe I'm taking time off work for this.
Yeah.
I'm not
You're
the
like,
problem." So, I saw one guy, he had popped dirty so many times, and he'd done so many things that they finally sent him to, I think, the Crow's Nest down at the VA, where it's more of a mental health care facility in-house, like mental health
oh,
stuff.
yeah.
But I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me, man." It was a joke, and so I remember them all talking about it, like, they'd have to go to, like, 3 counseling sessions a week, and then they have to go to, like, AA or, like, NA, Narcotics
Yeah.
Anonymous, and all these different group meetings and all this stuff, and all they do is share notes on how to get through the next test at the counseling session. "Oh, you're a week ahead of me. What did they ask you?" The whole thing is a joke. I wrote a big letter to the state talking about what I saw in Veterans Court. Nobody
Hmm.
had the courtesy to ever respond. They don't
So,
care.
did they have like in counties they have like formal probation, let's just say, and they have a an assigned probation officer that checks in with them. They have to check
Yeah,
in like every day, like pretrial risk assess. Pretrial risk is what they called,
right.
and they're on their own recognizances. But in in order for them to be on that, they have to come in and check in every time with a pretrial risk, a coordinator, or a probation officer. So my question is, did in veteran court, did they have like somebody who holds them accountable, I guess, every week
There's a
or every
probation
day?
officer assigned. There
Mm-hmm.
was, because I remember, he got to come back to the house. He did his night so the way it works with a veteran is if you are incarcerated for 90 days, they pull your VA benefits. I don't know if you get them back, but they pull them. So they let him out on day 89.
Wow.
And because he's on the title of the house, guess who gets to come home? And I have no say over it. I couldn't
Wow.
even get a restraining order at that point. So he comes back. We're still in the same house together. I'm trying to find every moment that I'm alive a place to take my animals and get out.
Yeah.
When he came back to the house, I came into the office, and one of my bosses looked at me and said, "What happened?" I said, "He came home." And she walked away and she called me about 15 minutes later. She goes, "Can you come into my office?" I'm thinking I'm gonna get screamed at by them for
Yeah.
something whatever. She goes, "We found you a place to live. When can you leave?" That day.
Wow.
So I was able to pack up. I got all my friends rallied, and we moved me out over this year. I mean, I had to move 5 tons of hay. I had it like you name I mean,
It was
but
everything.
coworkers and friends came together and got me out of that house. I couldn't believe it because up until that point, I'd been looking at ads, I've been going out. I was, like, looking everywhere to get out of there, and I couldn't buy because I'm tied to this house. It's not like I
Mhm.
could so I had to get you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
now I have to file for divorce and then get off that title, like, get that house sold so that I could go buy. But, and then it didn't stop, like, him driving by. He found out where I was pretty quickly, and we actually had to bring in extra security at the office for a very long time. Um, we had they actually had to reconfigure my desk because, more office cubes, you sit with your back to the space so that your
Oh,
boss
yeah.
can see your
Mhm.
computers. They reconfigured it so that I'm looking at it because nobody to this day, if you walk up behind me, I lose it. I
Yeah.
turn around and swing, or I turn around to if I am armed and somebody walked up and scared me, I'm afraid of what I'd do. I have to be very careful because of that fight or flight instinct now I have.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so but anyway, I finally did get an order of protection for it was a few months. Um, but he ultimately left the state. And then when he came back, he was in front of my house 2 weeks later. The house that I have now. I had bought this place while he was gone. He was out of state. So I'm like, "Really? Wow, it didn't take him long." And then I went to get an order of protection and he wouldn't give me one. So that's just this county. I think victims, we have a long, long way to go to make
Yeah.
victims have more. It seems like the perpetrator has more right than the victims because they know the law. When I found out after going through this whole process, some of his past that I didn't
Mhm.
know. Now, gosh, if I date anybody, I'm doing a full background report on them. I spend $100 before I date with anybody to
Right.
find out who
Right.
they are. Who he had then. Trusted him. Stupid. I met his mom. I met his brother. I met his kids. It's gonna be fine, right?
It just makes you wonder what made him snap. Well, even when you guys were dating, like, I mean, we not talk about the paranormal stuff. It's almost like, did he get infested with a demon? I mean, that's, like kind of my
No,
crazy thinking sometimes,
I
but
think his mind I think his mind I'm thinking he was very gifted, but I think his mind was just the PTSD and then bipolar and schizophrenia, and, there was some kind of diagnosis in there, some kind of psychopathy in there.
yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff going on there, and I think it's just not being able to
I wonder if he had multiple personalities too. Like you said, he
I
had
don't think so. He
schizophrenia,
was
but
just
I wonder.
always ugly. He was just
Oh,
always
always
ugly.
there was
He
nothing
was like
different.
like he was Gemini, but he was just always and yeah, at first at first his mother did blame me for the big incident, and I'm like, I think it was when my friend, I think she's passed away now, but, ultimately, I wanna say they had a conversation, but I think his mom realized how broken he was
Yeah.
and started coming around to, "Yeah, it really wasn't your." I there's n n I think he would have snapped with no matter who was there because of the mix of medication, the cocktail he was taking,
Yeah.
and, yeah. So while he's in veterans court, I'm not allowed to have weapons. Isn't that a kick? I had to remove all the weapons from the house and
Hmm.
prove that all the weapons were removed from the house. A house that I occupied, I could not have a weapon to defend myself because he's in veterans court. Yeah. But they
I
said,
just feel
yeah,
like the
because
system is broken,
it
like
is so, so
completely.
broken. And I keep wondering, like, how can you fix it? Like, how, you see people, they go to Capitol Hill and they get this and they get that through, but you know what kind of effort and energy that takes? And you just get so worn down by it all.
Yeah.
That's why I tend to stay here and I have locked gates and I'm very protective of the property and the peace that I've made here. And if somebody disrupts my bubble, they
Yeah.
go. They have to go because
Hmm.
I've been through enough. And I haven't been through what some people have. I have to say, even though there was a lot of threats and even though he pulled a gun on me several times, he never he never hit me. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he knew that if he hit me, I'd just turn around and beat the hell out of him. So mad. But I just yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
what's worse. I think obviously being physically hurt is worse, but the psychological torture of living with somebody like that is unbelievable. So is it
Yeah.
strictly PTSD? Absolutely not.
No, no, I don't think so. I think I am still appalled with how the system failed you, mostly as a victim, and treated you as a defendant. That's what it seems like. And I feel like the VA, I don't call them out because they failed him as a veteran. They failed
Yeah,
you as well.
I have very little trust of our VA because of
I,
this and
yeah.
subsequent issues. I know it's worked for a lot of vets, but I haven't had it was incredible. They treated my dad incredibly well. But
Hmm.
it wasn't this VA system. Every VA system is different.
Yeah.
Um, the Northern California VA system treated my dad like he was made of gold. It was amazing. It was amazing. Um, the one that I'm in here is not has my experience has been that it's really, really bad. Um, and if you do complain, then you have a target on you from them and you're going to not receive any care.
Yeah.
You better keep your mouth shut. And that's my experience. I really hope that there's a ton of I've been in this is the fourth VA system I've been in the United States. So cuz I moved around the country for work and I've always been treated really well.
Hmm.
It's this particular system that I'm in here that's not so good. And I pray all the time it gets better, but that's not my experience so far. I've been here 15 years and I have not had good experience here.
That's terrible.
I think if you mesh with the right person, um it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow. Colleen, I am just awe-inspiring of you and what you've been through and how strong you are. And I'm glad that you have told your story because it's super hard to tell your story and let other people know that it's okay to ask for help. It's you're never going to save him or
No.
her.
I did go to a counselor. It took me a while to realize, and I think it was my boss and a couple other friends who said, maybe you should seek a counselor. I think it was my boss's gentle way of saying, you really need to go to a counselor because my work
Yeah.
was suffering. How can you not go through stuff like this and have it affect every part of your life, right? So,
I can hear
um,
Doc too. I can hear him.
yes. And so I did go and I went through probably 4 or 5 counselors before I meshed with one, and then I went to her for about a year and a half, and she was amazing. I did male and female counselors. I didn't care. I just wanted somebody to figure out, first off, how did I get myself in this position and how do I never get there again? That was my goal. How did
Yeah.
this happen to me? Because I'm a strong person. I left home at 16. I graduated high school at 16 and left home and I was gone. I just never looked back. I was like doing my thing, you know? And so how do you go from being this super independent person to being into this? How did
Yeah.
that happen?
How
I
does that
always
happen?
looked at victims of domestic violence and domestic abuse as weak. Now I realize that is not the case at all. That is not the case at all. And I
No.
feel really bad for all those years of thinking, God, just walk away. It's not that damn easy. It is
No.
not easy. Like I didn't have children. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. I would not have stayed through. It would have been the first week out. I mean, like, nope, I'm out. If I had kids, I stayed because it was difficult for me to figure out where to move all the animals and get everybody safe. My priority's always been take care of all of the critters and get everything safe. I don't. If I had kids, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how people make it through stuff like that with children. I really don't.
I don't. I don't know. And yeah, it's terrible and it's heartbreaking. But
So
the bright side is, like you and other people who can come out from a domestic violence situation or domestic abuse become incredible voices for others who can't. And I think you have become that incredible voice tonight. So I wanted to thank you. And, that means a lot to us and our listeners for sure. But yeah, if anybody is watching this or in a situation they can't get out, you can get out. You can. And you have so much support. And we'll post that support system on our Facebook. And yeah, so, oh my gosh, we're just about out of time. um, and I appreciate you, Colleen, for telling your story again. And you guys stay tuned next time. We'll have some more serious topics, but also some very lighthearted topics. Please like and subscribe. We definitely need the likes and subscribes. And guys, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
thanks for listening to this.